Let's move on to movies and talk about our top 10 for movies. And so, these two lists, I think similar to what you said, like certain approaches, certain methodology. And with
Yeah,
movies, there's obviously, I think, a lot much more in contention. We see more movies
yeah,
regularly than we do see television shows.
for
So
sure.
technically, it's a little bit more competitive, to put together these lists
Mhm.
and to pick, what are going to be like the best of the best for our top 10 of the year. And so, you kicked off the last list. I can kick off this list as we go
Alrighty.
through. And also, just like as a preface, we're going to, there's a couple of movies that made it on our list, like Nickel Boys and The Brutalist, that we haven't been able to talk about. So we'll talk about those a little bit more extensively when we get to them. But what made it at my number 10 spot on my top 10 movies list was Challengers.
Yeah.
Came out earlier this year in March, I think it was. Obviously, the movie from Luca Guadagnino, who put out two movies last year.
Mhm.
Challengers and Queer, another movie that I enjoyed. But Zendaya really just showing off our star power alongside Mike Faist and Josh O'Connor. Challengers, man, you know, initially I didn't think it was going to make my list, but it stayed on my mind after I saw it just like for months and months and months. I rewatched it. It's one of those movies I just feel like culturally it's going to be around in the
Mhm.
conversation for a long time. It just has so many
Yeah.
elements. Like when you talk about Zendaya star power and just like where she's at in her career, the music as we
Mhm.
see now getting the recognition that it deserves, the sequences, the scenes, the conversation, some of the weird things in the
Yeah.
movie, the relationship dynamics, the love triangle, the power stuff, just so much to it. It's just so
Mhm.
juicy. And it's one of those like infinitely rewatchable films that I think it's just going to have a place in the culture for years to come. Like I think in 10 years, we're going to be referencing Challengers, especially as we talk about the career of Zendaya as she continues to ascend over the next few years and really become, more of a movie star and continue to make these interesting, cool choices that she does. And so it definitely, I think it earned a spot, on my list and made it quite high up for me as one of my favorites of the year.
Yeah, man. Challengers. Ugh, what a movie. It's such an interesting Challengers is so crazy. The experience, the first time you see it in a theater with all the people, everybody's like, what is going on? And that's just such a fun thing, I think, to share with other people of like what is happening in this theater. Shout out to Challengers, man. My number 10 spot is Wicked. Kind of similar. Wicked is one of those ones. I know I liked it, but I still couldn't put my finger on how I felt about it completely. But because I kept thinking about it, I'm like, I'm gonna go ahead and throw it on the list because it's just one of those ones that stay with me for a little bit. I really like the music. I like what it represents. We talked about it in depth here recently. I still think part two will be my more favored part. I think I like that part a little bit better, but I was like, man, I would really like I would like a musical to be represented, I think, on this list. So I threw Wicked on there. I still think it's a good movie. It has its flaws, but it can make my 10 spot. So yeah, man, that's how I ended up there.
What do you think about that name change? It's not part two anymore. It's Wicked for Good, which is one of the. It's probably the best song in Act Two for Good.
Mhm.
So they added that on in the side. I don't know. Do you think that was like what was the reasoning behind that? Because like sometimes we've seen like with the part one and part twos, that's
Mhm.
that's sort of bitten certain studios in the ass.
Yeah.
Like for example, Mission Impossible, Dead Reckoning is no longer a part one and part two. Now it's the Final
It's a
Reckoning.
whole nother movie. Yeah.
It's like a whole different thing now. We've seen that happen a
Mhm.
lot, and it seems like Wicked followed in that trend, but I don't know if they had to because they didn't market Wicked as a part one, even though a
Yeah.
lot of us knew it was a part one.
Yeah,
But
they just called it Wicked.
they just got a Wicked.
Mhm.
I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It's a weird thing that I don't understand. I will say I think that name is fire. I really do. Like Wicked for Good, it sounds cool. I think it has like a something to it, like a poetry to it. That's like, wait, what do you mean by that? You know what I mean? It's like, what do you mean Wicked for Good? What are we talking about there? So, like you said, popular song, but I actually kind of like the title. So, we'll see. I think as time progresses and as the trailers comes out, and the movie comes out, it'll tell me how I feel about the title. But yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, I just wonder if that was always in the cards for them. I don't know. But yeah, it's a clever change that they'll probably certainly reap the benefits from.
Mhm.
Next one, Evil Does Not Exist. We talked about it earlier this year. This is
Yeah,
the Raisuke Hamaguchi movie. Slow build, very methodical, very, very, I would say, a very measured movie, a very
yeah,
very measured movie that takes its time.
mhm,
But when it reaches the places that it needs to get to, and this is signature for Hamaguchi as a director. Like he did the same thing with
yeah,
Drive My Car.
mhm,
Again, another movie that just stayed with me. I saw it in the theater. I saw it at Lincoln Center, and I was just like, this is just staying with me. Like I just can't get it off my mind after I see it because just like when it snaps in focus at the end, it's just like, oh my goodness. It really, really hit me like a ton of bricks. Like once I realized what story was unfolding, because I didn't expect it going into it. I just didn't know what to
Hmm.
anticipate and what to expect from it, but it delivered something that was just like really, really prevalent in its themes and what it was going after, and just like what it was talking about with some of the socioeconomic things and some of the tourism, sort of
Yeah.
ideas and gentrification, things that I think we
Hmm.
kind of deal with in big urban centers. This is
Yeah.
more so in a rural environment, but it just had a lot that it was trying to tackle and achieve, and I think it did a really, really successful job at tackling most of those things.
Man, what a fascinating film. I think if I had like thought that this was, I don't know why I didn't think it was 2024. I don't know why how I missed that. But again, one of my favorite posters of it. Bro, have you went back and looked at the poster after seeing the movie?
Oh, 100%. And it's just like that's interesting what we
I
did
was
here.
like, "What?"
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm telling you, like, that is not even a spoiler. You're not even gonna get it until you watch the movie. Like,
No, yeah.
it is kinda crazy. I was like, "Oh my god." But what an interesting, meaningful film, Evil Does Not Exist, man. Like you said, it is a slow burn, but if you listen and pay attention, it's so interesting, the stuff that they're going through and talking about. It's like, this definitely happened. You know what I'm saying? Like, wait, this stuff was actually happened. So yeah, yeah, what a crazy film, man. Very good film. Late Night with the Devil made my number 9 film. Man, you knew I had a blast. I was next to you in the movie theater. I had a blast when this movie came out. I think it's so fun and so different from a lot of the horror films that we've gotten over the years. It's just something else. They take what you think you know about or how you feel while you're watching it. You think you're watching this late night television show, and you are, but then they get you to believe certain things like you're the audience member. I think that's so rewarding and so cool that they did that, and it blows your mind a couple times. Again, it's if the end didn't fall off the hinges, if those last like 3 minutes didn't fall off the hinges, it'd probably be higher in the list. But it's still really good for what they were doing. I love how they kind of shot for the moon in some ways in this movie, man. So very impressed. David Dastmalchian also does a phenomenal job. The performances are underrated, I think, in this film as well. But yeah, really like Night with the Devil. I can't sing his praises enough. I keep telling people like, they're like, "Oh, what do I watch?" I'm like, "Have you watched Late Night with the Devil yet?" Because it's like a perfect Friday night movie, and that's kind of how we seen it too. We seen it on like a perfect. It was just like a cool Friday night. Sit down, you pay attention. It's real chill. Get your mind blown. I loved it.
Yeah, it's a really good movie. It was one of the better theater experiences of the year too. Just
Yeah.
sitting in a movie theater, watching that film, not knowing what to expect, not knowing what's going to come out, from the next scene. It was a really fun time for sure. Number 8 on my list is The Beast, which is a French and Canadian film. That came out starring Léa Seydoux, and it was one of those that snuck in for me. Again, just another movie when you watch it and you see
Hmm.
it. For me, it's just one of those things that has so many big, huge, ambitious ideas that sticks with you, and I've been thinking about it ever since I saw it. I did only get a chance to see it once. I
Hmm.
plan to rewatch it pretty soon, but this is a movie that takes place over multiple time periods. It's a generation spanning story. It's told out of order in a nonlinear fashion. A lot of it reminded me, honestly, because there's so much sci-fi and romance in it. A lot of it
Hmm.
reminded me of the Wachowskis movie Cloud Atlas, which came out in
Uh-huh.
2012, I think it was, the movie with Tom Hanks and Halle Berry. I know a lot of
Yep.
people hate that movie. I love Cloud Atlas. Like I think that's a banger. It's a crazy, wild, over the top, just like almost
Yeah.
nonsensical movie. Like I don't know how they even made that film. I just don't
That's
get
the
it. It's
Wachowskis. That's
but
what they
that's
do.
what they do. They're kind of
Mhm.
brilliant in that way. It reminded me of that in some respects, just because of just like this overlapping time structure, this multi generational story. But it's focused on two characters and their romance and just some of the challenges they deal with in these different time periods. But there's a lot of sci-fi in it, and I love that. It's definitely a genre movie, even though it
Mhm.
doesn't appear to be that way. It's multilingual. It's just so many different things wrapped up into one beautiful, delicious package. And Not Criterion officially, but Janus Films, they just released it officially on Blu-ray, a physical. It looks
Mm.
gorgeous on that as well. So it's just like an incredible movie that I really, really enjoy watching. Can't wait to dive back into it more, because I think it's one of those films too that the more you watch it, because it is really
Mhm.
long, it's like 2.5 hours.
2:30,
You're
yeah.
gonna you're
Mhm.
gonna uncover new things that you just did not see the first time, new clues as you see the story unfold, knowing what the context is and knowing where the characters are gonna go. But it's a really, really, I think, exceptional movie that came out last year.
Man, yeah, I can't wait to watch it because, like you said, it's on Criterion Channel, right? I remember being like, "Oh
Mhm.
man, there goes the Beast! I need to click on that," and I just haven't had time to do it yet. But yeah, the Beast is definitely on my here recent or my near future watch list. I can't wait to check out, man. My number 8 spot, boy, oh boy, Furiosa: Mad Max Saga. Yeah, this is just hella fun to me. I love technical things. I love when the visuals come together. I love when the sound comes together. And to me, Furiosa Mad Max Saga, Furiosa was doing everything it needed to do from a blockbuster standpoint besides making money. that's that's all. That's really the only thing taken away from it for me. Chris Hemsworth is given the craziest performance. He's go absolutely nuts as kind of a villain in this thing. Anya Taylor Joy does what she needs to do. Just I can tell it's crazy because I feel like more and more as the years go by, we're always surprised about how these older filmmakers are still putting out movies of this high quality. And when I think about George Miller and how old he is, and him making a movie like Mad Max Saga, it just like still kind of blows my mind. But yeah, love Furiosa Mad Max Saga, man, so good.
Yeah, I wish I really wish it did better, box office wise, but that'll never take away from the quality of the film. Just the fact that he was able to return to this world 10 years later, in his 80s, and deliver something of this level.
'80s,
Yeah,
wow.
it's pretty crazy to make a movie of that stature, of that scale, with this level of action, at that age. It's almost incomprehensible. It did make my top 25 for sure. It's a movie I remember saw it twice in the theater because it was just like, what did I just watch?
Hmm.
Like some of these
Yeah, it's
action
like,
sequences were still just like, how are we still doing this, at this
hmm
particular day and age? Really, really quality movie. Next on my list is Flow. Mentioned it earlier. It did win the Golden Globe for Best Animated Feature Film. This is my favorite animated movie of the year. Oh my goodness. It's such a great movie. And here's why. I am not really an animal person, and I'm
hmm
certainly not a cat person. This
hmm
movie made me a cat person. God damn it. I grew up with cats. I've been around cats. I've been around a lot of animals growing up, and I've been scarred literally and figuratively by cats. I'm not really a cat guy, but this
yeah.
movie will win you over. Even Bill Hader said it himself. He's like, I think I'm a cat guy now. Like, this is just a really, really fun movie that's
Yeah.
about friendship. It's about survival. It's about connection, and there is zero dialogue. We don't have talking animals in this movie. There's none of that. And that's
hmm
really why I love it, because everything is communicated through sound, through
hmm
gestures, through movements and reactions. I mean, we'll talk about Mufasa eventually, and I won't
Oh,
disparage that
God.
movie. But when we talk about emotionality and
Yeah.
making that feel real for animals, there's certainly body language to animals that you can read and communicate, and you can know how they're feeling. I think if you're a pet
Right.
owner, if you've been around pets for a long time, you can read certain emotions, and somehow, some way, this movie pulls it off, and you just know how to read every single thing. And it's not just a cat. There's dogs, there's birds and seagulls
Mhm.
and all sorts of animals that our main sort of protagonist encounters on this journey. Essentially, their land is flooded, and it's really just a story about survival, just not dying. It's a very, very simple story, very quick, short movie. I think it's sub 90 minutes, but my goodness, just what they were able to do. I haven't seen anything like it. And the animation quality is beautiful. A lot of painterly stuff that they do with it. It's just really, really beautiful stuff that they do in the movie. Just the vistas and the landscapes and the different environments. There's rain and sea and water and grassland, all really earthly things that just come to life in such a beautiful way. And I think the filmmakers even used a process in which they utilize free software. Like this wasn't like
Mhm.
huge filmmaking techniques. They use like free
Yep.
software to make this and pull this off. And I'm just like, how, Sway? How did you guys do this? Because this looks
Mhm.
better than some of the Hollywood productions that we get sometimes.
Yep.
So I have nothing but positive things to say about Flow. It's a truly, truly superb movie.
Yeah, it's one of those ones that I have to see. You know how much I love animation, man. I've heard nothing but rave reviews about it, and like a Latvian animated film is coming in here and just kind of cooking like this. I have to see it. And the other interesting thing, like you said, not only the software, but they said all the whole team is young. This is what they say. They say everybody. This is some of the earliest things that they've done. They haven't been. This isn't a team that's worked on all these crazy projects. It's a young team, like you said, free software. It's just crazy. I can't wait to check it out. But I love when movies like this come out because it's like the the intentionality and the art direction, all of those things are more important than I think some of the other things we try to put on some of these films. And so I love when people come in and are like, no, this is how it's supposed to be, guys. You know what I'm saying? So can't wait to see Flow, man. It's funny we got animated films in the same spot, but my number 7 spot is the Wild Robot movie I've already talked about. I love it, man. I think it's a very beautiful movie. Of course, it's about found family, but I think when you watch it and you understand the things, there's actually dark themes for adults that I don't think a lot of people understand that's in it. I'm like, did y'all hear that? Did y'all see what's going on here? Or do you understand what they're trying to say with this thing? I think there's so many layers to it. And yeah, I just really enjoy that film. It's heartfelt in different ways, and of course, it has its little cutesy things in it. But I think if you really pay attention to what it's trying to say, it's a movie that goes beyond surface, man. I really appreciate that about it.
Absolutely. And, as I said earlier, I was a lot softer on it when I first saw it in theaters. Rewatched it again just to, let's solidify how I feel. And tune has completely changed. That happens sometimes, like that can certainly be the case, like rewatching a movie just upon different
Yeah.
circumstances. And I enjoyed it significantly more the second time that I saw it,
Mhm.
as opposed to the first time. It didn't make my top 10, but it's definitely in my top 25, just recognizing all of the great brilliance that's within the movie and why it became sort of the sensation of the fall when it came out. Moving here, The Substance, number 6 for me. We talked a lot about that movie. I don't really have much more to
Yep.
add. It's just a phenomenal piece of work. Coralie Fargi and Demi Moore and Margaret Qualley, like everybody just a part of this, delivered. I think probably my favorite movie theater experience this year, if I'm being
Mhm.
honest. And
Mhm.
most of these make that list. Like Dune Part 2 was incredible, and Nora was incredible, The Brutalist was incredible, but The Substance, I mean, the audience that I was with, I mean, people were losing their minds. So it was just one of those things where it's like we're all watching something that we can't even comprehend right now, and it's just never
Yeah.
ending. It just doesn't stop. We just
Yeah.
keep fucking going, and we're still
Yep.
here. And so, yeah, it's just a great movie. I can't wait to continue to tap into it and expose people to it. I know a lot of people have seen it. Like again, it's like one of the most popular movies on Letterboxd. Somehow it surpassed the 1 million watch club like within the first couple of months of being on Letterboxd. It was pretty ridiculous. But I
Yeah.
definitely want to continue to expose more people to the substance over time.
Yeah. Man, Substance. My number was at 6 spot.
Well, that's 5 for
Yeah,
you.
you said it all. It's 5. 1, 2, 3,
Yeah.
4. Oh, yeah, yeah. It's like that. It's as a fan of horror to come in and to be completely wowed and awed in that way, and to have so much to say behind that, and the editing, and there's so many references to other old horror. Psycho was in it, and The Shining it's just crazy. Like when you really watch it and see what they're doing, it's just what a phenomenal movie, man. My one above that, 6, Nosferatu. I'm not gonna talk about that in depth right now. I have a many more words. I will review that later. Just know Robert Eggers is him. That's all I need you. That's all I need y'all to know is Robert Eggers is him. But yeah, I'll let you do your number 5.
For sure. Sing Sing, again, another movie that we've talked about a lot on the show. Loved it. Incredibly dramatic circumstances, real story, very authentic movie. Coleman Domingo deserves all the praise. I wish Clarence Macklin was getting more praise in this particular season.
Talk about it.
Um,
Talk about it.
Hopefully, still that there could be a case with the Academy. I think there's still a shot, but just like some of the best, most authentic performances because there's literally like just real people in this movie. Like it's almost a documentary. It's not even a cinematic film at times because we're like following real people throughout the story. It's gonna get re-released here in a couple of weeks, so if you haven't seen it, I would encourage people to check it out if you can. It's definitely I think just a really beautiful moving story overall for sure.
Yeah, I might have to go watch it again. Man, Sing Sing is my number 3. What a I think a lot of times when I am working on my top 10, and I think you said this, it's just like, how did it make me feel? Sing Sing was one of those ones where it's just like, it, it, most movies like this, kind of like Nickel Boys, which we'll talk about in a minute. Nickel Boys ends and it kind of pisses me off a little bit, right? Sing Sing ends and it makes me, I don't know, it's not that same anger. Sing Sing is like it makes you kind of hopeful in a different way that I wouldn't expect me to really feel that emotion when watching a movie like that. I feel like it should make me angry, and it does to a degree, but that's kind of what the movie is about. Is men and black men and their anger and how they ended up in the places in which they ended, man. I think it's just such a deep, complicated film. Not yeah, it's just a beast all around. And even the fact that you said they're working with, it's like a documentary at times. The fact that they're working with people who had never been on a camera ever, and that's the result you get. That only speaks more to the director and Coleman Domingo and him having all these. It's just really impressive. But my number 4 spot, which is your number 2, Honora. I mean, we've talked about it, we raved about it. Y'all know how we feel about it. Amazing, just I can't sing Honora's praises enough, man. One of the best films of the year.
Oh man, Honora, again, another top movie theater experience of the year. Just a
Such a
roller
good.
coaster of emotions. Just a roller coaster. I think one thing about the movie, and I didn't mention this on purpose when I reviewed it because I didn't want to spoil anything for people who hadn't seen it. And still, if you have not seen it, if you don't want to hear anything about Honora, then I would encourage you to stop here and maybe fast forward like 45 seconds. But one thing watching that movie that I felt for most of
Mm-hmm.
the runtime, I felt like a sense of dread because I thought something really bad
Mm-hmm.
was going to happen.
Yeah.
And it's
Mm-hmm.
rare when a movie makes you feel that, and then something bad doesn't really happen. Like bad things happen, but not to the degree. Like I thought people were gonna die, and
Yeah.
nobody dies in Anora. And I definitely thought that was gonna be the case, just because of like
Mm-hmm.
who we're dealing with. And again, I'm just bringing this all up just from an emotionality standpoint, where it leaves you from the beginning of the movie to the end of it, two completely different places, and you just go on this journey across a night, and it's just it's fantastic. It's one of the most fun experiences that I've had as Sean Baker. He's emerged as a new favorite for me of this generation just because of the quality he
Yeah.
consistently puts out, how
Mm-hmm.
just in tune and adept he is with these certain communities that he decides to put his focus and attention towards, because he just does it unlike any other. And so I just really, really enjoyed Honora. Number 3, Dune Part 2, your number 1. I mean, come on, we did like an hour
Come
review on the
on.
movie.
Yeah.
It's phenomenal. It's one of the best science fiction epics of the 21st century. Denis Villeneuve, he's just proven himself as a singular director in this particular field. Probably one of the best sci-fi directors of all time, up there with the all-time greats like Ridley Scott, James Cameron.
Yep.
He just consistently does it. Not for us, I know, but obviously in the conversation of like these big awards and all this stuff, the only thing working against it is that it's an unfinished story. It's the middle chapter. It's a
Mm-hmm.
part 2. There's more to come, obviously, but if I'm being honest, just based on my knowledge and what I've seen and what I've read, the first Dune book is probably the best book and the most interesting book. And so he
Yeah.
completed that story. The first book is done, and it's like my guy did it. Dune Part 1 and Dune Part 2 put together,
Yeah.
it's a science
That's it.
fiction masterpiece. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's definitely one of those ones that had to be on this list and deserves to be here.
Yeah, man. Man, it's funny because what Dune is like, he only made the second book at first because people didn't understand the first. He was like, y'all don't get this thing. I'm gonna have to make some more of this book because why aren't y'all understand what I'm trying to say? But like you said, man, it's just I can't rave about Dune enough. This is the thing I look for. We also talked about it when like there's not much going on in the world that I can sink my teeth into. Like Star Wars isn't on in the movies. Harry Potter's not on in the movies. There's just not a like Lord of the Rings isn't on in the movie. Like Dune right now it has been the world that I can sink my teeth into. It's the thing I can nerd about. Video games is coming out. Like you can go back and read. It's just that thing for me at the time. And I think to be able to communicate that dense ass book on screen the way that Denis Villeneuve did, make it look beautiful, make it comprehensible. I understand what's happening. I understand the story. It's just I just really love that movie, man. That's why it got my number 1 spot. My number 2 spot goes to Nickel Boys. Oh my god, this movie right here. A lot of people haven't gotten a chance to see it yet. I think it will be releasing again soon, hopefully, in a larger variety of cities. But Nickel Boys is I don't even know where to start with this film for me personally, man. This movie is based off of a book by Colson Whitehead, very amazing Pulitzer Prize winning author. If you haven't read any Colson Whitehead's work, please go and do so. It's really good. But also the director Ramel Ross, a black man, had a I think it was a documentary. What was it? It was like maybe 5 years ago called Hell County. This evening. Just go watch it, and I think you'll understand that Nickel Boys was his next obvious thing that he was going to do. And Nickel Boys is it's a movie about a black boy who ends up he has college dreams, but he ends up in kind of what's called the Nickel Academy, which is reformatory school in Jim Crow South. And I think your mind can take you and do whatever you need to do with that information. But he does this thing with the camera where a lot of it is from a point of view standpoint, and the technicality and the difficulty in conveying, I think, this story and the way that it does, it's so heartfelt. It's so uh uh there's a lot of ingenuity behind it when you watch it. You're like, I've never seen a movie like this, especially tackling, I think, the subject matter that it's tackling in this way. It makes it so intimate. It makes it so interesting, but also heartbreaking. And like I said before, I did leave like angry, like, oh my god, like my fists were clenched. But I also couldn't. This movie did not leave my mind for a second in watching it. I still think about it. I haven't even seen it for a second time yet, and I'm over here like, this movie is. I really think it's that good. The cinematography is fire. I really like this movie a lot, man. I can't wait until more people see it so we can have more conversations about it. I think it's worth seeing. I think more people need to get their eyes on it, but I think when more people do, it's going to be one of those movies that no one ever forgets watching, and that's for sure.
Yeah, Nickel Boys. I was very much anticipating this movie for a few months. Had heard about it out of the New York Film Festival, and it's tackling, as you said, some really difficult subject matter that will make you angry by the time you finish it off, because it's all of this stuff is inspired by real things. Like what we see in the Nickel Academy in the movie is based off of a real academy
Mm-hmm.
that exists, the Dozier School for Boys. And
Yeah.
so all of these stories that are included here are very much inspired by real life happenings, and Ramel Ross, because he does have that documentary background, absolutely adds all of that stuff to this movie. I mean, there's a lot of archival footage in the film that pulls from real life stuff. And Ramel Ross, for him to be basically a first time feature length filmmaker with this film, to do this, I got to give it up to him, because I admire the bold choices that he made in this movie with this POV style of shooting, and it's
Yeah.
shot from only two perspectives. So whatever we see as an audience is what the characters are seeing. And it's
Mm-hmm.
not a groundbreaking approach. It's been done before, but it's not done often,
Yeah.
because it is a really, really challenging thing to pull off. And I know for a lot of people, it's one of the things that they are lauding him for, because for many people, they do feel like he pulled it off. I do think that your enjoyment of this film will be contingent upon whether or not you can get past that creative choice, because it is a
Mm-hmm.
choice, and it's one that's very distinct, very different, very unconventional. And I do think for me, at some points, it created a bit of a disconnection between
Mm-hmm.
myself and the emotional nature of the story. Sometimes I was a little confused, like, who are we following right now? That happened a couple of
Yeah.
times.
Mm-hmm.
And I think also too, like, you could just tell watching the movie that there's like so much attention that's put into the production design and the costumes and the environment. Like, this is a really real thing that they've created here. And sometimes I wonder, like, am I missing certain details because we're shooting it this
Mm-hmm.
way? Like, am I getting the full effect of the storytelling that's happening in the film from a physical perspective, because I can't
Mm-hmm.
see things in the way that we traditionally see them. So I'll be honest and say that a part of me kind of wish I watched this at home, because I saw it in a theater,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
and and I feel like maybe watching it at home, and I'll never say this about anything. Y'all know me, like, y'all
Yeah.
know how I am about the movies, but I do wonder if this might have benefited me, just me personally. I don't know about everybody else, but me personally, I
Yeah.
wonder if I would have benefited from watching it at home more. Because in the theater, I was getting a bit frustrated at the choices, just because. Again, shooting from that perspective, it's really challenging.
Yeah.
You can't always see the emotions of the characters, that you're following, because you're like looking through their eyes. That's certain stuff that, like, I'm very much an emotion guy when it comes to movies. Like, I'm all about emotion. And if I can't see certain emotions, I'm like, so how am I supposed to feel here? I kind of feel muted in certain respects. And I do
Mm-hmm.
know also, like, after sort of skimming the book in certain respects, that there's a lot of extra detail and backstory for other characters that they cut out for the movie, just to really focus on two characters that's probably the right decision so that it's not like a 5 hour long movie. But a part of me wanted to maybe get a little bit more about the backstory of some of the other boys that are in the school, because
Mhm.
we really just focus on two characters. And I do wonder maybe if it would have benefited from maybe some other perspectives, other backstory, where they come from, their families. Like the book dives
Right.
into that stuff quite a lot. And I also wonder maybe if reading the book might be advantageous for people too before watching the
True.
movie. This
Yeah.
might be one of those rare situations where like the book and movie, they might go hand in hand, and
Yeah.
that's not
It's very
always the
possible.
case. They
Mhm.
can be very much companion pieces. I want to watch it again though, at home, and see how my feelings might evolve or change or stay
Mhm.
the same. I don't know. But I will again. I have all nothing but praise to say about Ramel Ross, just like with the creative direction behind the movie. Like
Yeah.
nobody's doing stuff like this to this degree, because it's a really risky thing to do. And again, for him to just come, and do this like on his first time feature film, it's pretty admirable. I definitely got to give it up to him for that respect. I wish we were hearing about it more though, in these conversations about
Man.
award seasons. It did get nominated, I think, for one award at the Golden Globes. I don't know. I don't know, man. This is like again, it's a really challenging movie.
Yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
and I wouldn't go as far as to say it's divisive. I don't think that's the case. It's pretty
Uh,
beloved at this point.
yeah.
But there
It's not
are
people like
there
it.
are
Yeah.
people definitely challenging the nature and the notion of it, just because of like the cinematography and the choices behind
Yeah.
it. And that really
Mhm.
might turn some people off. I don't know. Do you think that might affect its chances at more recognition? Like, could this be something that might not get nominated for any Academy Awards, or do you think it might be represented in certain play? I don't, maybe best adapted screenplay or best
Mhm.
cinematography. Is it a shoe in for that? I don't know. What are your thoughts on just like its chances there?
It's hard to say because I think for a little bit, early or even pre-award season, I would say you did see it kind of creeping up and popping up in some people's either lists or people thinking about like, huh, what about Nickel Boys here and there, and so I don't really know. I think that could be a choice that it's so interesting. It's like both a choice that could win it in those some of those rooms, right? The cinematography is both a choice that could put it in some of those rooms, but also potentially take it out of some of those rooms. It's kind of hard to tell, I think, in that sense. And again, my other thing about it, I'm not sure how many people have actually seen the movie. Like I've seen, there's a couple of, I think, film pundits I follow. Of course, they have seen it, and I think from some of those people, they love the movie. I know a lot of like it's like a critical, and in some ways, it's a critic darling. But I don't know, I can't imagine a ton of people have actually sat down and decided to watch the film. And I think that's one of the hard parts about it as well. In some ways, it kind of has the Sing Sing problem. It's like, oh, this movie is great, but who's seen it? You know what I mean? And so I don't know. I think it has some hills to climb in that way. I don't know if it'll finally release in more theaters the same way Sing Sing is about to next week. You know what I mean? I hope it has that run, but I think more eyeballs need to get on it to see if and maybe that'll even help some of the contention and maybe what it will do in award season. I'm really interested as well. I really don't know.
Yeah, even outside of that, I mean, one thing that I certainly did love out of the movie, which is no surprise, Anjanae Ellis Taylor, in her role. Um, I really, really, really wish she would get recognition for that. I don't know if it's gonna happen. It's probably unlikely at this point, but she should,
Man,
because she's good as always. She's just good as always.
as good as
Just
always.
good as always. Just you just show up and see her in a movie, you just know you're gonna get something that's
You
just
know it.
absolutely phenomenal from her. So we'll see in due time. I'm just gonna quickly review my number one movie, The Brutalist. Saw this a few weeks ago. A24 decided to release, partner up with IMAX and release it. So I got a chance to see it in IMAX, which was a treat. In 70 millimeter. This is it's a pretty big movie to talk about. And for most of the year, my movie that was number one when I saw it was Anora. I just felt that was gonna obviously be my number one. But then I saw The Brutalist, and it changed on an instant. Like I instantly knew it as soon as I saw it. And
Yeah,
that's
man.
just when you just know, it's
When
just
you
like
know,
one of
you
those
know.
situations. And
Yeah, man.
The Brutalist is a movie that's following a character who is leaving his home country, to come to America to find a better life for himself. It's following the character of Laszlo Toth, played by Adrian Brody, who comes to America. He's a brutalist architect.
Mm,
Brutalist architecture, was a style of architecture that was popularized in the 20th century. But he survived the Holocaust. He immigrates to the United States, and he's basically trying to achieve the American dream. That's like the the bare bones premise of the film. If I had
mhm,
to just give it away in that respect, but it's obviously about so many more things than that. Here's why I love the movie though. The Brutalist, for everything that it is, it's one of those films that it's really gesturing at a lot of those big, grand American epic movies that just don't get made anymore, or they're
mhm,
very rarely made anymore. Like this movie is gesturing at films like The Godfather, films like
mm,
Once Upon a Time in America, films like There Will Be Blood. You can feel the DNA of those types of movies all over it because it is this story that's a 3.5 hour epic that's
yeah,
following a character trying to build a better life for himself, but also the corruption and some of the poison that can come with that idea, chasing that
mhm,
idea. And it's about so many different things and so many ideas. Obviously immigration is in there, and it's tackling architecture, at that particular time. But that architecture conversation is in conversation with filmmaking. It's weirdly a conversation about filmmakers as well. Not on the surface, but if you read between the lines and see, like, yeah, this is about an artist who was pursuing his art, and outside forces are coming in and manipulating his vision and bending it to their
mhm,
will. And we see a lot of filmmakers go through that. Brady Corbet, the director, has talked about that. Let filmmakers be filmmakers, let artists be artists. That's what this movie is about. And it's basically incorporating obviously some really well-known world history, the Holocaust and World War II,
mhm,
into a definitive form of 20th century sort of expression, and that's architecture. But again, it's also commenting and providing commentary on filmmaking, which also exploded in the 20th century as well.
yeah,
So you get some really, really incredible performances in this movie. Adrian Brody, easily his best work since The Pianist, and this movie is
mhm,
very much in conversation with The Pianist. Like that's a similar
mhm,
story. Adrian
yeah,
Brody once again plays sort of a Holocaust survivor, but it also made him the youngest Academy Award winner at that time. He's delivered
mhm,
really solid performances all throughout his career. He's been in a ton of Wes Anderson movies. He's done some good TV. He's always been solid, but he hasn't been able to quite reach those heights that he did when he was 28, 29 years old. He's back at that level now. He is just so phenomenal in this movie. He's in almost
mhm.
every
I learned
frame. He
Splice.
carries it on his shoulders. He's really, really incredible. But I think the
Mhm,
standout here is Guy Pearce. He steals the show. He's this big, cartoonish, bombastic villain. And at times he even turns out to be funny. Like he's not just like this evil guy, he's very over the top, but he also is like funny, and he provides levity
yeah,
in a movie that is like very heavy and very serious, and maybe even can be read as pretentious, but it's certainly going after that effect and that feeling. He comes
mhm,
in and adds so many different layers and wrinkles to the story, as the foe, as the antagonist, and he's the one that's really the manipulator behind a lot of things that go down. And the last thing that I'll just like quickly mention in totality with the Brutalist is the technical stuff and some of the more, I guess, the more details behind the movie outside of the story and the performances. I just don't get how a movie that was made for less than $10 million looks this good, because this movie has a very small budget, less than 10 million, and it looks
crazy.
better than most Hollywood productions, I would say, that were made in the last 5 to 7 years, easily.
Mhm,
It feels transportive, it feels epic and grand. One of these shots that Corbet frequently uses in the movie is a POV style shot when there's a car driving down a road, and the cars are driving super fast. He uses a very similar technique in his previous film Vox Lux. You can
mhm,
see a lot of similarities between those two films from a cinematography standpoint, but it's stuff like that, just small stuff like that, that really just takes you to this time and this era and this place. Like the movie starts off and you see this big, bold, beautiful shot of the Statue of Liberty, but it's
mhm,
upside down, and it's upside down for a reason. It's on the poster. They really warp this moment to present this iconic structure that we know, that we see, but to give you like the meaning of like what the movie is going for, and just like the
yeah,
foreshadowing that's happening there. And it's like really creative cinematography in those types of shots that I found them to be hypnotizing. It's shot on VistaVision cameras, which rarely happens anymore. That had to be super expensive. Released in
Mm,
70 millimeter.
did not know
It
that.
has an overture, an intermission. Like these are things that just don't happen anymore. I think the last time a mainstream Hollywood movie had an intermission was Quentin Tarantino's The Hateful Eight, which came out in
Yep.
2015. I saw that in theaters. It was a roadshow presentation. It had an intermission. I remember seeing that movie and going out and running into like a college buddy, and we talked about it. It was a great time. And The Brutalist has a built-in 15-minute intermission. It's 3.5 hours, and I thought it was phenomenal. More long movies should probably have intermissions. It's actually really
Yeah.
useful. Everybody got
Mhm.
up, went to the bathroom, probably refilled drinks and popcorn.
Yep.
People were talking. They were like, "Wow, this is amazing, ain't it?" Like you
What a
just
great
got
movie,
that.
guys.
What a good movie. Like we can all reaffirm that in the middle of it. It was incredible. Like I'm just like, why did this go away? Why don't we do this more? It obviously doesn't work for
Yeah.
everything, but for these longer
Mhm.
movies, and we know movies are getting
The
longer
the
these
Irishman.
days. The Irishman, Killers
I
of the
think
Flower
Irishman is pretty
Moon, like anything. Like we can
good.
throw out any
Yeah.
example that's 3+ hours. Why not? Like why? What's the big
Mhm.
deal? So I'm here to say bring back intermissions. I'm here for it. I thought it was
I'm down
incredible.
for it.
It
Yep.
was great, but yeah, this is just a work of art. This is phenomenal. I think the one criticism people have had, it's not from me, but people have said like maybe the second act isn't as strong as the first act. The first act is just all ascension. It's just up, 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 up. The second
Mhm.
second act is darker, more challenging, but that's what I expected. Like I kind of knew where we were
Mhm.
heading. And
Yeah.
stories like these, if you've seen movies like these, if you've seen Once Upon a Time in America, There Will Be Blood, like if you've seen movies like
Mhm.
this, you know, oh shit's gonna get really, really bad and dark on the latter half of this. So I just expected that, so it worked
Yeah.
for me. So yeah, phenomenal film. I think it's just like a real testament to the power of Brady Corbet. I mean, he cemented himself as an auteur with this movie, so I can't sing his praises enough.
Man, honestly don't have much to say. I just can't wait to watch it. I still have not got the opportunity to see it.
Because you
But
just
yeah,
got
I have
4 hours to kill, right? You just got you just got 4 hours to just
well,
throw out the window.
I was in KC. It was only in LA and New York, man. If in fact, if it was there, I was looking
Yeah.
for it. I was like, if somebody what's so frustrating about Kansas City, small tangent. What's so frustrating about Kansas City is AMC is headquartered there. I feel like when they say select theaters, Kansas City should be a part of that because it's the head. Like you're the city, it just doesn't make any sense. Like just play it somewhere. You got all these AMC's, you can't put it in one. Come on, man. Like
That's a
you
NATO
can.
thing, though. That's
People,
not an AMC thing.
I
That's
know, know,
that's just a
I
distribution
know.
deal.
I get it, but it's like, y'all could try harder, try harder to get it there. But yeah, I'm very excited to watch this film, and it's funny because like even before watching it, I already know how I feel. I know my sensibilities. I'm like, oh, Brutalist! I can't wait to watch that film. So very excited to watch it. Actually, I already have a ticket for Friday, so we'll see. Here we go.
Unbelievable. Quickly, any honorable mentions, other movies that did not make the top 10 that you just want to quickly call out?
Oh,
That you want to
so many. You know
let's keep
that
it to like
the
three
10
or
spot.
four, but
You know, 10 spot is like the hardest spot. 10 spot, you're like, what am I gonna do? But real quick,
yeah.
Long Legs, Conclave, A Real Pain, Challengers, Civil War. Those are like the main ones for real, for real. And Alien Romulus. Those are all like, oh my god, what am I gonna do with this with this 10 spot? This is crazy. So yeah, man, all really good movies that I enjoyed.
Yeah, those same for me. I'll just point out Rebel Ridge. That's just like
Yeah.
unbelievable action movie that I really enjoyed. A Different Man, incredible movie. The First Omen, I've been thinking about it ever since I saw it. I just love that. I thought it was one of my favorite horror movies of the
Mhm.
year. And Kneecap, definitely want to shout out Kneecap. That's just a bold, audacious movie out of Ireland that people should see. It's on Netflix. It's a great movie. So yeah, a lot of great stuff that did come out this year. Again, same as TV, I wouldn't call it a great movie year per se. It was solid though. I think it
Mhm.
ended better than
It's
it
pretty good.
started. I
Yeah.
was I was concerned at the top of the year, but we ended in a
Yeah.
pretty strong place. It ended and sort of rounded out. It was one of those. I was really worried because it was just like sequel town, just nothing but sequels. And by the time we got to
Yeah.
the end of the year, I'm like, oh wait, a lot more original stuff coming out. And I think even when I was putting my list together, I'm like, oh yeah, there's only one movie on my list that has like that's pre-existing IP, and that's Dune Part Two. Everything else is original. I don't know how I just
Mhm.
I did not mention Red Rooms. That was my number 4 movie. A
Oh
movie out
yeah.
of Canada, a thriller. I won't get into it. It's just an unbelievable, dark, sadistic, twisted movie. But it says so much about society. I think it just has so much to say. I'm gonna have to get into it probably another time, but that's just
Yeah.
a completely original movie. The Substance, wholly original. Sing Sing. These are all just like really, really original propositions. So it turned out to be a pretty solid year. Like once things ended off, I do anticipate next year is going to be. I hope it's better. I do hope it's better because I was concerned, but we'll see. We'll see how things shape up. But folks, those are all of our thoughts on our top 10 list, TV and movies. If you agree, disagree, have any thoughts on how we selected things, where things landed on our list, definitely hit us up and let us know what you think.